Well, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the Wren Suite here in St Paul's Cathedral for this Sunday forum. My name is Jonathan Brewster. I'm the Canon Treasurer of this cathedral, and it's my great privilege to be able to chair the meeting today. And let me explain for those of you who may not have been to one of these before how it works. Our speaker will speak for about 40 minutes, then we'll have 20 minutes or so for questions, and then we'll wrap up at about 2 o'clock or something like that. Let me introduce to you our speaker for today. Father Nadim Nassar is the Church of England's only Syrian priest. He was born and raised in a Christian family in Syria and studied in Beirut during the Lebanese civil war. He has lived through 4 wars and described how, when living in Beirut, he would find himself crawling through the library at his seminar to avoid snipers and get his books before going back to write his essays. He has said that being there in a war for 1 single minute changes you forever. Father Nadim is now the director of the Awareness Foundation, which he established in 2003 with Bishop Michael Marshall. It seeks to counter intolerance and mistrust and to build understanding and relationships between people of different faiths. In his first book, The Culture of God, it's published this autumn, and the BBC's Edward Sturton said about it, "So much of the reporting of the Middle East reflects war and human misery. It's inspiring to find in this thoughtful and engaging book a message of hope from what Father Nadim calls that region of the world that God chose to live in when he took human form." There are copies of the book available for you to purchase at the end of our event this afternoon. But for now, would you please welcome Father Nadim?
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. Very gracious and generous introduction. Actually, it is true. I have friends from Beirut here amongst us, and we remember the time in Beirut during the civil war in Lebanon. And yes, it was very difficult. We used really to crawl to the library and open the door of the library. No light was allowed. And going inside the library, taking the books and crawling back to the basement to write the essays so that we don't miss courses and we don't miss our deadlines, to avoid snipers and all the horrible war. And later, when I graduated from Beirut, 1988, the war in Lebanon was not totally over. I felt I wasn't supposed to live the war. Many times during those 7 years, I was supposed to be killed. Literally. I was sniped at by a machine gun which was designed for aeroplanes. With that machine guns, somebody shot at me and my friend from Jordan, and the bullets came between us directly. I mean, I don't think he could have done it again. So just for the shot to come between us, exactly between us. And I remember walking in the most prestigious street in Beirut, Hamra Street. It's like Oxford Street here. And a soldier was in front of me with his RBG. Do you know what RBG is? It's a small rocket launcher. So he puts the rocket launcher on his shoulder and fires. When you fire with this, 2 meters of flame shoot behind him. So, and he was walking with the rocket launcher down, and I was behind him. And suddenly I decided to overtake him. So as I was walking beside him, suddenly he decided to launch a rocket because he saw something. So he took the rocket launcher and fired, and the flame shot behind him. And 10 seconds, I would have been burned to death. Just 10 seconds. So after 7 years of hell in Beirut, and after I saw with my own eyes the battleship New Jersey. Have you heard the battleship New Jersey, the American battleship? Shelling Beirut and the suburb of Beirut from the Mediterranean Sea. The aim was to end the war. Imagine a battleship shelling a city, a capital, would end the war. And many people believed that lie. And the next day, the night of Beirut turned into day with the launching of rockets and rockets and rockets whole night. And the next day, the war continued, and many people died, and many homes were destroyed. And the battleship New Jersey could not stop the war. The same thing is happening today in Syria. We are facing a proxy war that everybody claims that they want peace to that country. And I tell you something, everybody lies. And every single country, including our own country in this wonderful country, the UK, politicians are lying. Nobody wants the peace in Syria. They want to pursue their own interests. I lived the war in Syria. I talked to the war people, to the torn apart society. I just came back with Huda, my sister, from Syria 2 days ago. 2 days ago. And the situation is dire. And no one can see any peace agreement or settlement in the horizon. And everybody claims that they are working for peace. It is amazing that we still repeat our awful history for generations and generations and deceive the people that through violence we can restore peace. I remember when I started working on the book, The Culture of God, the whole idea came because after I graduated from Beirut, I felt every single day after the 27th of June, 1988, when I graduated, every single day from that day until today is bonus. I shouldn't have lived. And God has given me that mission of peace. But that mission of peace, which is not the opposite of war. The opposite of war is not peace. The opposite of war is a situation of no war, but it's not peace at all. Years and years and years ago, Egypt and Israel signed a peace treaty in Camp David. Do you remember? Sadat, Begin, and Carter. And they thought they brought peace between Egypt and Israel. And since then, I visited Egypt like 4 or 5 times. And I tell you something, nothing even close to the word peace is the situation between Egypt and Israel. So peace is not a treaty we sign. It's not a piece of paper. It is not the end of violence in a certain situation. What is it then? What do we want? When I thought about the culture of God, and I asked myself, if the very basic definition of culture is the outcome of people living together in a certain place, in a certain time. I repeat, if culture is the outcome, the result of people interacting with each other, living in a certain place and a certain time, and the elements of that culture, or the result, is like what? What do we call culture? Give me examples. Culture consists of what? Like what? What do we call culture? Language. Art. Music. History. Literature. The way we eat. The way we dress. The way we speak. Religion. All these elements we call culture. This is the basic definition, the very basic definition of culture. Well, that is culture. What is the basic definition of God in the Christian faith? What is the very basic definition of God? Who is God in the Christian faith? What is God? Who is God? Creator. Love. Supreme being. But in the Christian faith, we define God in a way that other religions do not accept. For us as Christians, God is Trinity. Thank you very much, Serge. God is Trinity. Trinity, if Trinity, is the reality of God and not a philosophical, abstract idea that we project onto God. If Trinity is the ultimate reality of God and the basic reality of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, then the eternal interaction between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the eternal interaction, whether we existed or we didn't exist, regardless of our existence, this interaction between the 3 persons in the Trinity must produce what? Culture. Because if we are created on God's, we are created on God's image and likeness. So, and culture is the result and the outcome of us interacting with each other. Then, in the Trinity, when God interacts with himself, then he produces a culture, or she produces a culture. But we have very, very, very limited access to that culture, if any. Because we have no access, because God lives beyond time and place, right? God is beyond our time and space. Because of that, it is impossible for us to access this culture. And we have glimpses of this culture, but we didn't know that these glimpses were called the culture of God through the creation. Look at the creation. Look at the universe. Look at the physics, the science, all the beauty, everything around us. Give us a little bit, a glimpse of that culture. But we didn't know that. We wondered about it, but we didn't know what it was. So, if you wanted to know the Syrian culture, and you go and you read about it, and you see films about it, and all this, would that be equal to talking to a Syrian? It wouldn't be equal. The best ambassador for a culture is a person who lived in that culture, right? That's the best. If I'm telling you I am a Syrian, and I've come to you and I talk to you about my experiences and my life in Syria, then you would believe me. You would understand what a Syrian culture means. So, because of that, we come to another thing in the Christian faith. If the incarnation is serious, if we take that God became a human being really seriously, and we believe in that, then the only person who revealed the culture of God was the one who came from the culture of God, which is Jesus Christ. So the incarnation and the Trinity work hand in hand. So the one who lived with God came to us to reveal to us the original culture he lived, which is the culture of the Trinity. Difficult? So when you live in war, when you live in violence, when your life is threatened day in and day out, you start thinking about God in a different way. What made me think of the culture of God? Is this the concept of peace? I will give you a couple of examples. Otherwise, you don't need to buy the book. Just a couple of examples. One example, when Jesus was on the boat with his disciples, okay? Remember that story, incident? When he was with them on the boat, and the storm was roaring outside, what was he doing? What was he doing? Sleeping. Come on. I went with my brother. My brother used to be a captain of a ship. And after I graduated from Beirut, his gift for my graduation was to take me on a trip in the Mediterranean Sea and to Europe. When we went into the Biscay, remember, geography? In the Biscay, there was a storm. And Nassar, my brother, his name is Nassar Square, he called me in my room and said, Nadim, come up immediately to the bridge. Of course, the brother of the captain had access to the bridge. So I went to the bridge and I looked, and I tell you something, I panicked. I was terrified when I looked through the bridge, all glass, and I saw the lightning, just like the veins of the sky. I said to my brother, oh my God, can we survive this? And he laughed. Well, he laughed because he was used to it. But for me, idiot of the sea, although my nickname in Latakia was the son of the sea, but I never experienced such a storm. So, and suddenly, The ship was going this way and a wave was coming this way. And I said to my brother, that's it. He said, just observe what happens. And my eyes were fixed on this wave coming, whoom, and the ship just was diving into the wave and coming the other way. It was unbelievable. And you tell me, in such a storm, Jesus was sleeping? Hello? Sorry, there's something wrong. The disciples were panicking, although they were fishermen, to the extent that the fishermen were panicking, and Jesus was not a fisherman, he was asleep. There was something wrong in this. He knew. He wasn't an idiot. He knew the storm, and he knew the disciples, and he knew the situation. He wanted to demonstrate to them the inner peace. The inner peace, which takes you away from the storm, which gives you inside a space of safety. This was what I was looking for in Beirut. This was the challenge between me and God inside the war in Beirut. Where is this space in me that I can run into and feel safe inside the storm? Well, I tell you something. This is not a theory. This is something very practical. When you can find in you this point of gravity, this chamber of peace that nobody could understand, nobody can identify with except the one who experienced that. So he was sleeping. So if we take the story from three perspectives, one perspective is the perspective of the disciples. For goodness sakes, we are perishing and you are fast asleep? Don't you care that we are dying? The ship is about to break. They were panicking. They see him, they see the storm, they see the ship. It's over. Game is over in the digital world. And then we shift into Jesus' perspective. Find the inner space in you so that you can deal with the storm. All of us have storms in our lives, whether illnesses, whether breakdowns, whether losing our jobs, whether losing people we love, you name it. But can we find this chamber in us that we can go to so that we withdraw, we absorb some strength and energy in order to face the storm? Jesus is not saying we should not face the storm. Jesus is challenging us in the way we face the storm. And this is a very good example how he was centered. The disciples were not centered. Again, when they brought to him the woman caught in adultery, do you remember? When the Pharisees brought him a woman caught red-handed in adultery. They brought her to him They didn't bring her to him because they didn't know what to do. They always pretended. But they were weaving a trap. So what was the trap? She caught in adultery. The law says she should die. She should be stoned. Okay. Here is the trap. We bring her to him and see what he thinks. If he says, stone her, what does it mean? What if Jesus had said, stone her? Exactly. He contradicts himself. And plus, what is the big fuss about him? He's another rabbi. He's another Pharisee who is trying to get some attention. Give him some attention. And let's finish the whole story. So, nothing wrong, nothing right. He's one of us, one of the Pharisees. So what is the big fuss? If he said, let her go, what does it mean? He's breaking the law. Goodness gracious me, you break the law, you're finished. Because the Pharisees are the guardians of the law. They are the closest to God, God forbids. Like us with this. Sorry, Jonathan. I'm very critical with this. So if he said, let her go, the problem is terrible, terrible. He broke the law and they could have got him. So there is no way out. Either let her go or stone her. What do we see him doing? Bowing down and doodling on the sand with his finger. Coming from Latakia, and somebody here from Tartus, which is the coast of Syria, we know the sand at the beach and in the streets of the coast. And I used to doodle in the sand. I used to have, and you see it in the book, I mentioned my best friend, my childhood friend. He used to tell me stories. He was a wonderful storyteller. And I was always longing for another story. I knew all of them, but I wanted him to repeat. And after a while, he would say, which story you want to hear? And I would tell him the story that I would love to hear from him. And he would speak. And also there is a whole chapter in the book about al-hakawati. Al-hakawati in Arabic means the storyteller. And Jesus was the immense and the fantastic hakawati, the storyteller. And I used to doodle in the sand. And he used to tell me the story. I know exactly how it feels. Because I was there. I was on the Mediterranean Sea. So he would bow down and doodle. Why would he doodle on the sand? He gave everybody the chance to speak. And also, in this time, he found this chamber in him, the chamber of peace, this sanctuary in him, to refocus, to recenter himself. And then they came like peacocks, the Pharisees. And they always dressed the finest in the public places to get the praise, of course. So they were like peacocks coming, and they thought, we've got it now. The trap is perfect. So the peacocks and the poor woman broken completely because she thought no way out. And after a while, and after he found this sanctuary in him, he stood up and said, what did he say? Who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. This sentence, my friends, does not belong to the human culture. Our cultures, even today, cannot produce such sentence, such a statement. No way. He brought this statement from his own original culture. And that is the culture of the Trinity, the culture of God. The culture that gives us the inner chamber of peace, that we can have the ability to connect with God when we need to speak or to act or to face a storm around us. It's the sanctuary that recharges our batteries and empowers our mind and warms our hearts to live the life in full. So when he said that sentence opened all the horizons in my heart that this does not belong to us. It belongs to the heart of the Trinity. And because of that, we come and we approach peace in a very different way as Christians. Because the risen Lord, when he came and he said, peace be with you, my peace I give you. What does it mean, my peace? That peace that he found on the boat and when he doodled on the sand, that kind of peace he gives us. Not the peace that the world gives in signing a treaty or stopping a bomb, but rather elevating humanity to meet divinity in his person. This is the peace that we are after. This is the peace that empowers us to face the storms of life. And this is indeed the heart of the passion, the mind, and the culture of the Trinity. Amen.
Nadim, thank you very much indeed for sharing so passionately your understanding of the culture of God. Now, there's a moment for us now to ask some questions. I know I have a question, but I'm sure you'll be percolating and thinking of questions. One hand has already gone up. Perhaps if you could repeat the question when it's asked,
I will.
So that the people watching on film can hear.
Please.
Thank you.
I had mental health issues sometimes I forget what I was saying. So I wrote a small amount of notes.
Did you write all this? Okay.
So it's a question and a comment. So I'm hearing Christianity from you. I'm African American Baptist, former government servant. I'm thankful for much, including having families to live and having received education and learning and having been provided with some incomes. I understand that sometimes war starts in the world, sometimes you're often, because of broken international agreements, such in relation to your comments on Syria,
Yes.
Israel, Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I was saying. So there's a question there somewhere, if you like.
Okay.
One question that I have that might relate to that is about how you describe the culture of God. How is the culture of God, in your perception, breaking in to the conflict in Syria today?
The culture of God does not work when politicians are focused on political and economical interests. This is not the agenda of the culture of God. The culture of God breaks in through the people inside the country. We have a big program in the Awareness Foundation called Ambassadors for Peace. And that program is directed toward young people. And young people in Syria need to be empowered to think differently about peace and to bring their peace into their communities, broken communities. I remember when Huda, my sister, and I, we gathered the young people the first time 3 years ago to talk about Ambassadors for Peace. I remember how suspicious they were about us. They looked at us, they were angry, they were frustrated, they were devastated. They did not trust anybody, especially politicians and clergy, with all religions. They were furious with God, with the church, with the mosque, with the clergy, with the world, with the politicians, with everything. As you would imagine those young people would be. And one young man, I remember very well, because his father is our cousin, comes from the family. So he stood up and said, "Father Nadim, who are you to stand in front of us and teach us how to become ambassadors for peace while you and Huda are living comfortably in London? So why would I listen to you?" Good question, right? I said to him, he is a dentist, very highly educated, a dentist and a musician, wonderful combination. I said, "You know something? You are absolutely right. What right do I have to stand in front of you and pontificate about being ambassadors for peace when I live with Huda in London? One right I have, one thing that gives me that right, that before you were born, I went through even worse than you are going through now. And I told them the evil days we went through in Beirut during the 80s. And I said, that gives me the right and the legitimacy to stand here and tell you to become ambassadors for peace. The result of that conversation was that 2 days ago, we completed our first group of 25 ambassadors for peace, taken out of, I would say, 150, to complete the whole program equipped with skills and abilities to implement peace projects in their broken communities. They are thrilling. You look at them and you see the enthusiasm, the power, the joy they have to serve their communities through projects they have. And for 3 years, we trained them to have those skills and to be able to implement peace projects in their own broken communities. Isn't that wonderful? This is where the culture of God breaks in.
It seems to me that culture of peace isn't just needed in war, it's actually needed now and here. There's a whole culture within society that is not peaceful. If you say it's linked in with politics, then our future politicians need to buy into that culture of peace. Where does the church fit now in creating that in this society as well as in Syria?
You are opening Pandora's box for me. Where does the church fit? We don't fit, my friend. We failed as a church. We failed to face the evil in Syria. We failed to face the evil in Lebanon. We failed to challenge the evil in Libya and in Yemen and in many, many parts of the world. In Africa, we failed. We are not worthy to have this culture of peace that Jesus brought. And who has the power to kick me out of the church? Please do. I don't care. We should have done much more. We should have stood up against evil, against violence, against discrimination. We should have supported the peacemakers and the peace builders, the true peacemakers. And we have not done that. Yes, the church did a lot of humanitarian support to those countries. But tell me something. For young people and children who are full of power and full of energy and full of capacities, do you think a piece of bread and a bottle of water and a blanket and a tent would satisfy them? Humanitarian aid is very important. And then what do? We keep sending blankets and food. Those people need a listening ear and caring heart. Those people need somebody here to stand up, the church to be a prophetic voice in the society. And we failed. It is so sad. It is so sad. We have not risen to the responsibility that we have taken from the Lord Himself. We have not challenged our systems enough. We still, in this country, sell every year arms to the Middle East for the people to kill each other. And nobody stands up and challenges that. And the church should be the first to stand up. The first. I told you, you opened Pandora's box. For me.
Can I just say, though, is it not time to change? Well, I'm saying we failed, I agree.
Yes?
We've got a future ahead of us. We can change.
We need to change. If we don't change, we are going to die as a church. The people are leaving our churches. Don't look at the couple of mega churches in the evangelical side of the church. Look at the church in general. In all Europe, we are losing our mission. Well, somebody would stand up Bound to every time it happens. Oh, well, church so-and-so and church and so-and-so are thriving. Yes, thank God for that. But look at the bigger picture. If we want to change, if we want to reclaim the prophetic voice in the society, we should be able to open our eyes to the bigger picture than this church and this parish and this parish. Do we have a vision in the church? Does the Church of England have a vision of the world, of what peace means? Maybe I missed it. As a priest, we especially priests, miss all kinds of things. But I think we don't. We don't. Yeah. Well, I raised my voice and especially, for example, when the Archbishop of Canterbury supported the Parliament and the government to bomb Syria. I spoke against him in the BBC. On the BBC on Sunday, 2 days after he declared his support to the government. It's not your mission. It's not your job, Archbishop, with all due respect. It's not your mission to support the government to bomb a country under no circumstances. Our job, our mission is always to challenge, always to put an alternative to evil. We can't dig out some ancient theological argument to talk about just war. It's over. We are in 2018. We're not in 1600 or 1700.
As a Christian, I worry about the right approach towards the issue in Israel,
Yes.
particularly in the context of fury of anti-Semitism, and what appears to me to be a racist endeavour in Israel. My ability to criticise and think as a Christian towards what I sense amongst my Christian friends are very antagonistic towards Israel, and as a consequence to a lot of my Jewish friends. From your experience, can you give any particular guidance or thoughts?
We are talking about anti-Semitism, okay? And we're talking about Islamophobia. And I can talk about Christophobia in this country. As a director of the Awareness Foundation, I have been rejected by many organizations and many businesses in fundraising because the Awareness Foundation is a Christian organization. Let's not be taken by those, sparkly slogans. And I want to make an absolute separation between having the right to criticize a government and discriminating against people because of their religion. The two are not the same. Everybody should have the right to criticize Israel as a country, as a government. If I shouldn't, take me to prison. But that does not give me the right to discriminate against anyone because of their belonging to a specific religion. So, discriminating against somebody because they are Jewish is completely different issue from criticizing the government of Israel. The two are not the same. Otherwise, we cannot criticize Iran because the Iranian government is a Muslim government. Where do you draw the line? Every country takes a flag of religion And you can't criticize the country because otherwise you would be criticizing the religion. This is nonsense. Total nonsense. We should not allow any discrimination against religion, sexuality, color, you name it, gender. That is what we should put our energy to stop and stand up against, but not to criticize the government. We should challenge governments all the time. So this separation should be absolutely clear, and this is where the dilemma is, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that. Please challenge me if you don't. But this is how I see it. I'm coming from the Middle East. I am Semitic, my friend. They say anti-Semitic. What do you mean anti-Semitic? Who am I? Coming from the moon? Syria is not Semitic? So it's a bit of a muddle. But that's what we should focus on. That in the culture of God, there is no Greek, no Jewish, no man, no women. Everyone is equal in Christ. No gay, no straight, no black, no white, no, you tell me. In that area, because we are Christians, in Christ, everybody is equal. Equal what? In the love of God, but not in our abilities. Everyone is different. The love of God respects the differences, the abilities, but equal in love. Before Christ, we were equal in the Sharia. We were equal in the law, under the law. But Jesus came to say, no, you are not equal. We have different abilities, different talents, different gifts, but we are all equal in the love of God. That is the only thing that makes us equal.
How do you make the love of God effective in this way? Because we're not political, or I'm not a politician.
Yes.
In lots of ways, nobody wants to be labelled a politician. But arguably, are we saying we've got to be politicians? Or how as people do we bring that sort of inner voice and inner peace that you've represented that exists in all of us? How do we bring that together in a way that isn't politics?
Before I demand the politicians to be equal in the love of God, let's practice it in the church first. Let's do it in the church and be a little bit modest. Before I teach a politician to know the love of God, do I know it as a priest? And am I teaching it in my church? Let's start step by step. I don't want a Christian plumber. I want a damn good plumber. But if that plumber is a Christian or a Muslim or whatever, it's not to me. I want a good politician. I don't want a Christian politician. Because a Christian politician could be a disaster. But let everybody uses their gifts in the right place. And when we feel that those gifts are not being used in the right way, we challenge that. We have the ability in love to challenge that. But let's, first of all, practice the love of God and the equality in the love of God in the church, and we would go a long way. Because out of those churches who could practice the love of God, will come out politicians and scientists and all kinds of things. I'm sure a lot of you have read God Delusion to Richard Hawking, right? I was very, very disappointed with the book. I thought it's much better than that. When I read it, I thought, is this all the fuss about? I'm sorry, Richard Dawkins, you cannot differentiate between the teachings of the religion, the beliefs of the religion, and the practice. So what does he do? He goes to the practice and he attacks religion because of the misbehaving of the people of religion. Sorry, Mr. Dawkins, I can do the same with science. I can do exactly the same with science. There are a lot of scientists who manipulated science inventions to create evil machines and evil weapons. Do you think the scientists are better than clergy? They're even worse. So let's not attack religion and preach atheism just because we have some bad clergy or bad Christians. Well, there are bad scientists, there are bad politicians, there are bad Muslims, bad Christians, bad Hindus, you name it. Where do we draw the line? The line is drawn inside the church.
Well, may I take this opportunity, Father Nadim, to thank you very much indeed for what you have shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can thank you also for joining us for this adult forum. Our next Sunday forum is going to be on the 4th of November with Canon Tricia Hillis, who's the canon pastor of this cathedral. Tricia will lead us to think about liminal moments, those moments of uncertainty, waiting and not knowing in our lives, which can open us up to a new closeness with God. That's on the 4th of November. If you'd like to be on our mailing list, then please complete the form that was on your seat when you arrived. There are also some spare leaflets of our programme here at the front in case you don't have one. And appearing here are some of the books, The Culture of God. And if you'd like a signed copy, then please do come to get one afterwards. We hope you'll be able to join us again. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.